You've probably already used some of the built-in conditional formatting options in Excel, but what we're going to do is build custom functions to solve specific problems. Let's say, for example, that you wanted to know what the biggest differences were between the budgeted spend and the actual spend in this table. Well, in Excel, you can go to the Home tab, go to the Conditional Formatting drop-down menu, and for example, do a color scale where the biggest numbers turn red and the smallest numbers turn blue, or in this case, we'll probably do the opposite, green as the biggest numbers, red as the smallest ones. But there isn't a lot of customization here. So what can we do in order to customize this and make it exactly what we want it to be? Well, if we start with something like the budget difference, for example, you can go to the Conditional Formatting drop-down menu, go to your color scales, but then click on to More Rules. You'll notice that there is a New Rule button, there's a More Rules button, there's a Manage Rules button, so we have the ability to get our hands dirty with conditional formatting. And if I click here on More Rules, it'll say, okay, you're either going to get a 2 or a 3 color scale. Let's say we do want a 3 color scale. And in this instance, really, really small numbers mean that we are over budget, that we have spent more than we were supposed to. So let's say that the lowest value here, we'll use the drop-down menu, is going to go to a deep red like that one. Let's say that the midpoint, the 50th percentile here, is actually going to go to white, and that the highest value is going to go to a deep green color. Let's say that one right there. And you'll notice additionally that you can move this percentile higher and lower, or you can set this to a number value. In this instance right here, I actually think that 0 should be the number that we're interested in. So anything that's a negative number is going to get more and more red. Anything that's a positive number is going to get more and more green, and white will be dead set in the middle. And when I click OK, you see exactly that happening. Things that are very, very close to 0, like this thing that's a positive 500, are just barely colorized, and things that are very, very negative or very, very positive get particularly dark colors. But what kinds of custom functions can we build into this? So I'm going to re-highlight those cells right there, and I'm going to go choose the Conditional Formatting drop-down menu and clear the rules from those cells. Let's start off with a basic, is this greater or less than this other thing? So here, for example, we have the actual end date, and over here to the left, we have the scheduled end date. And we just want to know very simply, was the actual end date before or after the scheduled end date? So if you go to the Conditional Formatting drop-down menu, you'll notice that none of these options are a possibility to us. Instead, what we want to do here is go to New Rule, and using this dialog box, choose Use a Formula to determine which cells to format. Now, this is very, very important. When highlighting more than one cell to use conditional formatting, you need to recognize that in that selected area, there's one cell that is clear and the rest of the cells are shaded over in gray. The clear cell is the cell that the conditional formatting is being applied to as the primary target, and then all the gray shaded over cells are where it's being copied to. The reason I point that out is the following. Let's say that I was interested in whether the scheduled end was after or larger than, the actual end was after or larger than the scheduled end. So I'd click in here and I would click on cell I6 and I'd say, okay, cell I6, if it's greater than cell F6, if it's after the scheduled end date, I know that there's a problem here. But if you notice, there are dollar signs on both of these two references, I6 and F6. And the dollar signs mean that we're going to remain locked on those cells, which means that the conditional formatting on all these cells, we'll keep asking the question over and over again, is cell I6 greater than cell F6? And we don't want that to happen. Instead, we want to compare cell I6 to cell F6, and then in the next row down, cell I7 to F7, and I8 to F8, and I9 to F9, and on down the line. So to do this, we're going to go in and make sure that the dollar signs are not on these references. You can do this by pressing the F4 key until all the dollar signs are off. Or in the instance where it's yelling at me like this, I can go in and simply remove this through using the delete key like you would expect. So now we have in the selected area I6 through F6. Excuse me, I6 through I34. Go to cell I6 and compare it to cell F6, and then later compare cell F7 to I7, etc. All we need to now do is click on Format here, and let's say we use a pink color like this, then click OK and click OK, and you can see that yes, this date is after this date is after this date, these two dates are after these, and these two dates are after these. So it is successfully doing its job. It's able to use a greater than symbol and apply this to many cells at the same time. Next up, let's say that I am interested in color coding a row and making it bold if either the full-time equivalent or the actual spend were over budget. Either of the two of them is perfectly fine. So if I want to highlight the entire row, I'm going to highlight this entire data set. And remember what I told you. In this data set, in the way that I've selected it right now, one cell is clear, cell C6. The rest of the cells are gray. So that means that the conditional formatting is being applied to cell C6 and then copied to all the other cells. That's going to be important here in a second. So I go up here to the conditional formatting drop-down menu and go to New Rule. And I say, yes, I do want to use a formula to determine which cells to format. And in here, I'm going to put in $or. And this will say if one or the other or both of these items is true, then we should color code things. So what are the things that we're trying to compare? We're trying to compare is the actual FTE greater than the budgeted FTE, and is the actual spend greater than the budgeted spend? Okay, so I'm going to click on cell J6 greater than cell G6, comma, cell K6 greater than cell H6, and close the parentheses. Now, you know based on the previous exercise that I probably don't want these dollar signs, but here's the tricky part. In the previous example, we were only copying the conditional formatting vertically down the page. Now we're copying it both vertically and horizontally at the same time, which means that we have to ask ourselves the question, do the letters in these references need dollar signs? And also, do the numbers need dollar signs? So the letters will make sure that it's always looking at the right column. Am I really interested in the columns G and H and J and K? Yes, I am. I'm not interested in the I column and the L column and the E column, which means that the dollar signs on those letters is appropriate. But the thing is, I don't always want to do the work in row number 6. So the dollar signs on all of those 6s throughout this little arrangement here are all incorrect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to remove the dollar signs using the backspace key on every 6 that's in this data set. There we go. But not any of the letter references, which again refer to the columns. So I'm always going to be comparing the G and J columns, and I'm always going to be comparing the H and K columns, but not always the 6th row. All right, let's format these up. I'll hit Format. I'll choose to format this maybe in a purple color. Maybe I'll change the font to a bold font, and maybe I'll change the font to a dark purple. Then click OK and click OK, and there it is. Going through that entire data set, every time that either the FTE is over budget or the actual spend is over budget, we are highlighting those entries in purple. Now, if you notice in the actual end column, some of those pink cells are being overwritten with the purple, and that might be perfectly fine, or you may want to have the pink overwhelm the purple. Either way you look at it, you can go to the Conditional Formatting drop-down menu, click on Manage Rules, and you see here that the pink rule is below the purple rule. So all I have to do is click on the pink rule and push it up and click OK. And now the pinks are superseding the purples in these different cells. And finally, I want to show you a conditional formatting trick that I use a lot in my spreadsheets. And it's that I want to take any cells that are supposed to be calculated. And if they're not being calculated, if they're not a function, then we need to make sure to highlight that successfully. And I'm specifically calling out the L column here. There are a couple of cells in the L column right now that are not the result of a subtraction. But I don't know which ones those are because it's really hard to go through every one of those cells and check by hand. So instead, I'm going to highlight those in a deep red color so they really pop off the screen. The way I do it is this. I highlight those cells that are supposed to be calculated. Go to the Home tab at the top of the screen, click the Conditional Formatting drop-down menu, and make a new rule that is based on a formula in that entry. Now, what is the formula? There are two formulas we're going to use here. One of them is the function isFormula. It's just that easy. So equal sign isFormula, open parentheses, and here I'm just going to choose to type in cell L6. Okay? Now, the problem with this is that this conditional formatting rule is currently going to conditionally format those things that are formulas. And I actually wanted the opposite. I want all of the things that are not formulas. So what I do is I go between the equal sign and the isFormula here, and I type in the word not and an open parens and then a close parens here at the end. So this is the logical function is what's in this cell not a formula. I click on Format over here on the right-hand side of the screen, and I choose to fill that in a deep red color, for example, and I click OK, and I click OK. And you can see that there are two cells in here that are not currently being calculated. So whether it's a simple greater than or less than, whether it's a more complex a logical function like and or it's one of the more interesting logical functions like isFormula or not, you can apply conditional formatting to your data tables either on individual cells or on the entire row.